Hello, everyone. I believe people are starting to roll in right now. I will let people start to appear in the session. And as people are rolling in, if you're interested in just putting into the chat where you are coming in from, where you're going to be joining us from today. Vienna, fantastic. London, wonderful. Lived there for 5 years. I'll tell a story or two from London. Pittsburgh, LA, Paris, Bogota, Amsterdam, London. Wow, we got a lot of people coming in from a lot of different places. Fantastic to see so many of you here. Thank you wherever you are. I guess it is morning or afternoon or evening, depending on where you are right now. I thank you for being here. I want to keep this interactive and engaging. So we're going to have a little bit of fun, hopefully. Just so you know, I am Steve Shapiro, as it says in the box below there, so you can see who I am. And today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how do we solve difficult problems? How do we solve difficult problems? And so what we're going to do is we're just going to dig into this a little bit. I'm going to give you a little bit of background, and just to let you know, what we're going to talk about today is going to give you a lot of stories, but my goal here is to give you practical application, real world tools that you can use. Towards the end, you'll have a chance to download some materials. So what I want you to do is I want you to grab a sheet of paper and I want you to grab a pen, because I want to keep this, again, very interactive. And hold on, things are locking up on me here. There we go. There we are. So grab a sheet of paper and a pen, because we're going to try to keep this very interactive. I want to leave you with some practical advice that you can actually, hopefully, potentially find some solutions to some of your most difficult problems. So to start off, I just want you to take a moment, just a brief moment, to just think about an issue, problem, challenge, or opportunity that you would like to solve. It could be in your business, it could be in your personal life, it could be anything that you want. And what we'll do is we'll talk about a process for being able to solve those problems. So just write it down. And just so you know, every problem statement that we're going to talk about today will start with the words, how can we? How can we? How can we improve revenues? How can we get a new job? How can we find a better house? Whatever it might be, that how can we statement, I want you to have that front and center as we move forward with this conversation. And what we're going to do is we're going to do just a quick experiment. So while you've got your sheet of paper and pen out, I want to just try something with you. And I want you to just write down the first thing that pops to the top of your mind. The first thing is write down a color. What's the first color that comes to your mind? Second thing is to write down a piece of furniture. And then finally, write down the name of a genius. All right, so a color, piece of furniture, name of a genius. Let's see if I can predict what you wrote down. So my suspicion is that many of you wrote down blue, red, or green. Some of you might have used purple, because I'm wearing purple right now, and the letters on my slides are a lot of purple. Maybe you had that, or maybe you had pink. Some of you were very analytical and you had black or white. But I think between those colors, we probably got most of the people, maybe orange or brown for a few of you. For the piece of furniture, sofa, chair, table, desk, or couch is going to probably get most of you. And for those of you who are getting ready to go to sleep because you're several time zones away from me here, you might write down bed, because that's what's on the top of your mind right now. And for the name of a genius, maybe you wrote down your own name, but most people are going to write down Einstein. So I'm just curious, in the chat, how many of those three did I get right? The color, red, blue, green, yellow, brown, purple. So I got 2, got 3, I got 1, 3, 2, all 2 of 3. Excellent. Einstein, 1, wonderful. So when I do this, what I typically find is that most people are quite predictable. And why is that? Well, the reason why most people are predictable is that our past limits our ability to see different and potentially better futures. And here's the reason for that. The reason for that is because the brain's primary function is not innovation. It is not change. The primary function of the brain is actually survival. And survival, basically what the brain assumes is that anything that we have done in the past didn't kill us, and therefore it's safe for us to do it again. So what the brain does is it will create something called neural pathways. And neural pathways are just grooves or paths in the brain to things that we've thought about for a long time, or things we think about on a regular basis, or maybe it's something we thought about recently. And so when we are looking for solutions, quite often we look to things that we've tried in the past. We might say to ourselves, we've always done it this way, or we've never done it this way, or we tried that and it didn't work. And those are the things that drive us to make certain types of decisions. So our past can influence the future. And if you look at many companies, most companies that, some of them survive for long periods of time, and then there's others which are famous companies that disappeared. Every country is going to have their own examples of this. And the reason for that is because they were smart people who lived off the past. They thought what made them successful in the past would make them successful in the future. Our ability to change is really one of the most important things. So what I want to talk about today is how can you actually change, recognizing that the brain is primarily wired for survival, and therefore repeating what we did in the past is a natural act. How do we change? I'm going to give you some clues as to how the brain operates. I'll give you some tools that will help you shift the way your brain operates. We'll actually do a Q&A session, I don't know, probably about in another 35 minutes or so. We'll see how we do. And then after the Q&A, I'm going to close with one or two stories that pull everything together. So with that, let's dig into the content and talk about some examples. The first example I'd like to talk about is toothpaste. I like toothpaste because toothpaste is a universal topic. It's something which everyone can relate to. Hopefully everybody here brushes their teeth at least occasionally. Now, if you go to the supermarket, the drugstore, the pharmacy, the chemist, whatever you call it, wherever you are, and you look at the section where they have the toothpaste, one of the things you're going to notice is that most toothpaste these days claim to whiten teeth. They claim to whiten teeth, and the way that they do that is with a mild abrasive or a mild bleach. So a team of dental experts in the UK decided they wanted to solve the problem, how can we make a whitening toothpaste that doesn't use abrasives and doesn't use bleach? And so part of it was the assumption that the experts, the dental care experts, were going to find the solution. And so this team of people, they spent time trying to solve this problem, and they came up with a lot of different ideas, complex chemical compounds and new formulas and a lot of interesting things, but none of them actually worked because they were all based on past assumptions of how we might develop a solution. Then somebody asked a brilliant question. This is a question I want you to consider anytime you are stuck, anytime you are struggling to find a new solution. I would like for you to ask this question. It's two words. Who else? Who else? Who else has solved a similar problem, not the same problem? So in this case, they asked the question, who else makes whites whiter when they're not using bleach? In the chat, who else makes whites whiter if they're not using bleach? Always curious to see what people think. Most of the time we get a correct answer pretty quickly. Don't see anybody in the chat there, so I'll just give you the answer right away. It is, oh, there we go. We got some now. Skincare, excellent. Carbon, color, baking soda, sodium bicarbonate. Those are all fantastic examples. And yes, baking soda is used a lot in cleaning products. Arm & Hammer has a lot of products that they've now created where they use it for pretty much everything under the sun. I love that. Well, as it turns out, the way that they were looking at this is they realized that laundry detergent makes whites whiter without using abrasives or bleach. Now, as it turns out, the company that was working on this problem, Unilever had a laundry care division and a dental care division. As it turns out, the two had never talked to each other. They thought this would be a great time. So the people from dental care walked over and they talked to the people in laundry care and they asked them the question, when you aren't using bleach, how do you make whites whiter? And they were told something fascinating. They were told, we don't. We don't make whites whiter. We make whites bluer. Laundry detergent has traditionally been blue because the blue dye in laundry detergent creates an optical illusion, an optical effect that prevents the reflection of yellow. Your clothes are still dingy yellow, you just can't see it. So they thought this was a really cool idea. And then they went off and they created a toothpaste that has a blue dye in it. And this blue dye creates the illusion of whiteness. It happens instantly. It doesn't take days, weeks, or months. And it lasts for several hours. Now, I use this example not because I think this is the greatest invention in the planet. I use this example because I think it's a great innovation process. And the innovation process I want you to start thinking about is really looking beyond the traditional places we look for solutions. So in this case, they found a solution in a completely different area of expertise. They didn't talk to dental care experts. They talked to laundry care experts. They found that connection. And here's the thing which I want you to start thinking about is the questions we ask will impact the solutions that are visible. The questions we ask will impact the solutions that are visible. And what we tend to do is we tend to ask questions that are very past-based, and we tend to ask questions that are built with a lot of assumptions. And so what we need to do is challenge those assumptions in order to be able to develop better, different, more powerful solutions. So I'm going to give you a couple of stories here that are going to illustrate the way the brain typically operates. Now, here's one that goes back to 2010, April 20th, 2010. If you were watching the news, many of you will remember that there was the Deepwater Horizon oil rig explosion. This was off the Gulf Coast of the United States. 180 million gallons of oil seeped into the waters of the Gulf Coast over the course of 87 days. They tried a number of different innovations, 7 big innovations in particular, as a way of trying to stop the flow of the oil, and none of those 7 worked. So what they did was they turned to something that a lot of us in the world of innovation are turning to these days, which is crowdsourcing. And crowdsourcing is just a fancy word that means we're going to ask a lot of people for their opinion, suggestions, and ideas. So they ask people the question, how can we stop the flow of the oil? How can we stop the flow of the oil? And over the course of just a few weeks, and asking concerned citizens and scientists how to stop the flow of the oil, they received 123,000 submissions. 123,000 submissions. Now, if you were running an innovation program and you got that many ideas, or if you were on Facebook and you said, hey, what are all your great ideas that I should be doing? You got 123,000, you'd probably be pretty excited. But here's the important question, and I want you to put this in the chat. What percent of that 123,000 do you think had any value at all whatsoever? What percent? Just put it into the chat. Wow, we got some good pessimists. There we go. I like these low numbers. We got a 10%, a 1%, a 5%, a 0.0001%, less than 1%, good. This is a very smart group. Excellent. So out of 123,000 submissions, 12 of those submissions were deemed as having some potential value. As it turns out, none of them had anything to do with the final solution. So I want you to think about that for a minute. That means that 99.99% of the time, people spent thinking about the problem, submitting their ideas, and then evaluating those ideas was a waste of time. This is why I say that asking for ideas is a bad idea, because solving abstract problems leads to irrelevant solutions. Because if we're spending all of our time trying to ask these big, broad, abstract questions, how do we solve world hunger? How do I stop the flow of oil? We're going to end up with irrelevant solutions. And these are the types of questions we typically ask, whether it's in business or in life. We tend to ask questions like, how do I improve the business? This is the traditional question of suggestion boxes. Or how do we make more money? Or how do I, as an individual, make more money? If I'm an entrepreneur, maybe I'm interested in that, or I might be interested in how do I attract more customers, or I might be interested in how am I going to leverage technology? We have so much new technology today. The problem is all of these are the equivalent of trying to solve world hunger. These are the equivalent of trying to stop the flow of oil. And this is why most suggestion boxes look something like this. I love this cartoon. It says this box yields 1 or 2 sensible suggestions, 4 or 5 stupid ideas, dozens of immoral suggestions, and hundreds of candy wrappers. This is the way we tend to solve problems, is we ask these big, broad, abstract questions, and we get a lot of irrelevant and wasted information from people. Now, it doesn't mean that that information can't be useful in some way, but it's not efficient. So I want to talk about how can we be efficient. And to do that, I want to draw something for you real quickly. Here in the United States, and I'm assuming in many places, there's an old children's story called Goldilocks and the Three Bears. And Goldilocks and Three Bears, Goldilocks goes into a house. And when she goes into the house, there are three beds. One bed's too soft, one bed's too hard, and one bed's just right. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what I call the Goldilocks principle. And the Goldilocks principle is a framework for thinking about how do we ask better questions. So there are three ways that we tend to ask questions. The first way that we tend to ask questions is questions that are too soft. They're too fluffy. They're too big. They're too abstract. So what we're doing is we're asking questions like, how do I solve world hunger? And we're expecting to get valuable solutions. On the flip side, we ask questions that are too hard. Too hard means they're too specific. They're too detailed. And what this means is either it is a question that is so narrowly defined that the odds of finding a solution are slim, or it is a solution masquerading as a question. So obviously our goal here is to ask questions that are just right. If they're too abstract, we need to find ways of breaking them down into something smaller. And if they're too specific, we need to make them less so. For the ones that are here, I just want to give you one of my favorite stories. This story comes from 1989. So this is the other oil spill, the tale of two oil spills. This is the second oil spill. This is 1989. This is the Exxon Valdez tanker. It crashed into Prince William Sound in 1989. And 10.8 million gallons of oil seeped into the icy waters of Alaska in Prince William Sound. Now, two things I want you to note that make this different than the Deepwater Horizon oil rig explosion. The first thing is that if you look at this picture here, one of the things you're going to notice is that pretty much there's land all around. The oil had nowhere to go. The second thing is that you'll notice there's snow. The temperatures were below freezing. So every time they tried to extract the oil water mixture, it would freeze. And so they spent nearly 2 decades trying to solve the problem. How can we prevent an oil water mixture from freezing? How do we prevent an oil water mixture from freezing? And this went on from 1989 till 2007 without any success. Until 2007, the Oil Spill Recovery Institute partnered with an organization called Innocentive, which is a popular crowdsourcing platform. And when they looked at the problem with fresh eyes, what they realized is that the problem was actually not specific to oil, and it wasn't specific to temperature, but it was actually a much more common fluid dynamics issue called viscous shearing. And viscous shearing is basically any time that we have a dense liquid that is put under force or acceleration, it will act like a solid. Now, for many of you hearing that description, you're thinking, I have no idea what he just said. So I'm going to play you a video. This is a buddy of mine. This is Steve Spangler. For those of you in the United States who've seen the Ellen DeGeneres, her show Ellen, Steve Spangler's been on this a lot. He's a scientist. What you're going to see in a moment is a video with a vat of cornstarch. It is a liquid. You'll notice there's ripples, there's waves in the water. If you were to stand on it, you would sink. You put your hand in it, it gets wet. We're going to play the video. We'll come back, and then I'm going to ask you a quick question.
There's 2,500 pounds of cornstarch in here. So now, watch this. You can just punch it, and it becomes a solid at that split second. If you could go from here to here, walking across without sinking, you don't die.
So are you spotting her? Good.
Okay. So when you go across,
you're gonna go fast.
Just go fast. Don't stop. All right. And we're gonna catch you at the very end. All right. But go. It's gonna feel weird. Just go across. Ready? Fast. Go. Go to the middle and just go really, really fast. Ready? Go, 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 go. Don't stop, don't stop, don't stop, don't stop.
Okay, so that's what was happening in Alaska. That was a dense liquid that was put under force or acceleration. You notice when she wasn't going fast enough, she started to sink, but if she went really, really fast, she would be able to literally walk across a liquid. In the chat, I would love for you to give me your thoughts on who might have found a solution. Now, before you do that, let me give you a little background. Crowdsourcing was used. The question was, how do we prevent viscous shear in a dense liquid? A little more background was given. And instead of taking hundreds of millions of dollars and 2 decades, in 6 weeks, a solution was found. And the cost was $20,000. What type of person, what type of background, what kind of experience might somebody have had that would allow them to find the solution to this? Just put some fishing. Wow, a lot of people fishing. Baking, good. I love baking. Chefs working with dense liquids. Manufacturing deals with viscous shearing. Chefs, biologists. These are all fantastic examples. And what I want you to start recognizing is that when we're trying to solve a problem, in many cases, we know where to look. I love beer manufacturers. I think just flew past me there. I love that. You know, so there's so many different places we could go to. We could go to chefs who are dealing with dense liquids. We could go to people who are working in paint. We could go to people who are working with anything that was a dense type of liquid. So we don't have to know a lot about the actual problem as long as we can connect with somebody who solved something in a similar place. Well, the solution actually was provided by a guy whose name is John Davis. And John Davis is a chemist, but that really isn't the important part. The important part is that John, at one point in his career, worked in construction. And in particular, what John's role was is to find a way of preventing cement chutes from clogging. Because if you didn't get the water cement mixture just right, they would seize. And so what John had developed was this way of vibrating the molecules of the cement, so that when it was time for the molecules might seize, it would cause them to loosen up. So John took his $20,000, he flew out to Alaska, brought his device, made some minor modifications to it, and he solved a 2-decade-old problem. A 2-decade-old problem simply by looking somewhere else and by finding someone else who found a solution that was in a different area. And again, if we come back to the Goldilocks principle, originally it was too specific. It assumed it was about oil and temperature. Now there is a way to look at it that's a little more abstract. So we're going to come back to that in a moment, but I want to give you my favorite story. Now, you know, we're all, I think, being part of this organization, the Small World organization, we're all like love travel at some level, and I love to travel, and unfortunately most of us can't travel right now. Well, I think back to the days when we were able to travel. We could get on a plane. Now, look at this picture here. A guy's trying to shove his carry-on luggage in because the allotments for carry-on luggage have gotten so small that in most cases we have to check our bags. Now, let's face it, you get off of a plane, last thing you want to do is go to baggage claim and wait for your bags to arrive. But that's what we do. I mean, it just takes a while. You know, in some cases it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it is. So one of the airports here in the US, when their passengers started to complain about the amount of time it took for the bags to arrive, they did some analysis and found that it took on average 15 to 20 minutes for the bags to get from the plane to the baggage carousel. 15 to 20 minutes to get from the plane to the baggage carousel. So what they did was they decided to solve the problem. How can we speed up the bags? How can we speed up the bags? And so they spent a ton of money on faster conveyor belts, more baggage handlers, newer technology. They got it from 15 to 20 minutes down to 8 to 10 minutes. If you're solving a problem and you cut the time in half, you would probably be cracking the champagne and, you know, declaring success. Unfortunately, when they asked the passengers, what now is your biggest complaint? Everybody said baggage claim, wait time, took too long. So you know how this works, though. There's a point of diminishing returns in any investment. If it took them that much time, money, and energy to get it down to 8 minutes, to get it to 7 minutes, 6 minutes, or 5 minutes would be prohibitively expensive. And then they had an epiphany. It took the bags 8 to 10 minutes to get from the plane to the baggage carousel, but at this particular airport, it only took the passengers 1 to 3 minutes to get from the plane to the baggage carousel. So what do you think they did? Instead of speeding up the bags, you got it, they slowed down the passengers. They literally reconfigured the airport so that it would take on average 8 to 10 minutes to get from the plane to the baggage carousel. You get to the baggage carousel, your bags are waiting. By the way, this is a great upsell opportunity because people are walking past shops and restaurants and stores and they're spending more money. And so look, what's happening here? Well, first of all, people experience wait time differently than they do busy time. Walking is busy time, wait time is not. And therefore, it seems more painful to wait than it does to walk in most cases. Now, what's going on here? from a question perspective, originally they were asking the question, how can we speed up the bags? When in fact, really the question they could have been asking is, how can we reduce wait time? Now, speed of the bags and wait time, they sound the same, but they aren't. The speed of the bags and the speed of the passengers both are combined to impact the speed, to impact the wait time. And here's the point. If you spend all of your time trying to speed up bags, you probably will never think to slow down the passengers. The questions we ask have a profound impact on the range of solutions that we will develop. Now, I want to show you the power of changing just one word. One word. We can go from how can we reduce wait time to how can we improve the wait time? How can we improve the wait experience? Well, now if you think about it, let's face it, airports are not the place where you have the greatest wait experience. You're not going to talk to airports. Who do you talk to? I'm speaking to you right now from Orlando, Florida. Disney World just reopened this week. Universal Studios opened up last month. We have SeaWorld, we have theme parks. These are the masters of wait time. People pay hundreds of dollars a day to wait in line. They're masters of the wait experience. Now, of course, they spend a lot of money on fast track and other technologies to reduce or eliminate the wait time as much as they can. But when they can't, they have to create a great wait experience. And so a buddy of mine here in Orlando worked on a ride called the Race Through New York City with Jimmy Fallon. And one of the concerns was that the wait times might be long. So they wanted to find a way of creating the ultimate wait experience. And this to me is the ultimate wait experience. You go in, you don't stand in a line. You walk into a mock of Rockefeller Center. It looks like you are just walking into New York City and watching about shows. So if you were into the Tonight Show, here's Johnny Carson, one of the greatest Tonight Show hosts. But you get to see all the different shows from NBC. You get to play games. You get to sit on comfy chairs with pandas if that's your thing. You get to recharge your phone and you get to watch entertainment. And what I was told is that the wait experience was so great that people weren't going on the ride. And that created a different problem, but a good problem, because they created the ultimate wait experience. And the point is, when you change the question, you now can look for other places to find solutions. So let's just deconstruct this a little bit more. We talked about 4 variations on the original question. The first question was, how can we speed up the bags? And then we went to how can we slow down the passengers? And the reason why we focused on that is because we're focused on how can we reduce the wait time. And then we wanted to figure out how can we improve the wait time? How can we improve the wait experience? Well, we might be able to take it a step further, because a lot of people, when I tell people this story, they'll be like, Steve, I'm someone who always carries on my bags. I always carry on my bags. Why do they make me walk when I just want to get off the plane and get to my hotel? So that you get a different question. Whoop, wrong direction. You get a different question at that point, which might be, how can we slow down the passengers with checked bags? How can we slow down the passengers with checked bags? So don't slow down everyone. Well, now we can't reconfigure the airport, but maybe there's a different way of doing it. For example, maybe if you checked bags, you sit in the back of the plane. And if you had carry-on luggage, you will go to the front of the plane so you can get off faster and get home quicker. Or maybe another question might be something very interesting, such as, how can we make the wait time seem shorter? Now think about it. You get off the plane. What's the first thing that we tend to do? We tend to call an Uber or a Lyft. And what is everybody doing when they're watching and getting their Uber or Lyft? They're staring at their phone. They're looking at their phone. They're being distracted. They're watching this little teeny microscopic car move across the screen. Well, what if instead of that, there's a bag moving across the screen? And that was the way that you could distract people from the job at hand. So let's talk about pulling this all together and talk about the tool, and then we'll go to the Q&A. And just to be clear, for the Q&A, please put it in the Q&A, not in the chat, because the chat has a lot of other things going on. So if you have questions, put it into the Q&A, and we will get to those in a very short moment. So I love this quote that's attributed to Einstein. He reputedly said, if I had an hour to save the world, I would spend 59 minutes defining the problem, 1 minute finding solutions. 59 minutes defining the problem, 1 minute finding solutions. And from my experience, most organizations, most teams, most individuals are spending 100% of their time, spending 60 minutes solving problems that are either unimportant or don't create value, or they aren't well framed. It's not about thinking outside the box. I know we use that expression a lot, but come back to the Goldilocks principle just for a moment. The Goldilocks principle says when we ask abstract questions, thinking outside the box, we get abstract solutions. So anybody who tells you to think outside the box, I say, get some advice from this cat who says, I don't care what anyone else says. I do my best thinking inside the box. And that's the point that I want to leave you with here right now before we get into the tool, which is don't think outside the box, find a better box. Find a better box. What we need to do is we need to be able to ask better questions. So instead of slowing down the passengers or speeding up the bags, we maybe need to slow down the passengers. Instead of improving or reducing the wait time, maybe we need to improve the wait experience. We did some work with NASA, changed one word in a question, went from how do we get clothes clean to how do we keep clothes clean. A one-word change yielded very different solutions. One was about cleaning fluids. The other one was a material science problem. So how do we ask better questions? This is the tool portion. There are, and you'll be able to download this very shortly, there are 25 different lenses that you'll be able to download that will help you rethink problems. And I'll explain how you can use some of these, and we can use this during the Q&A if you want. But basically, there's 25 different lenses. And what you're going to see is that they are broken down into 5 different categories. So only 2 of the 5 are specifically related to the Goldilocks principle. If you have a problem that is too big, broad, and abstract, you want to use the lenses that are about reducing the abstraction. And I'll explain those in a moment. However, if they're too specific, you will use the increase abstraction lenses. But those are only 10 of the 25 lenses. Sometimes we're going to use the switch elements lens. Like the baggage claim is a great example of switching elements. Instead of speeding up bags, we slow down passengers. Changing perspective means we're going to look at the problem from a new angle, a way that we hadn't seen it before. And then the zero-in lenses are all around about how do we make sure we're solving the right problem. So let's just talk about the lenses a little bit here. And then what we can do is we can open up to Q&A and have a good conversation, hopefully. So you can see here that we have the lenses, the reduce abstraction lenses. There's 5 of those. So you got leverage, deconstruct, reduce, eliminate, and hyponym. Hyponym means basically how can we use a word that is more narrowly defined than the word that we are originally focused on. So for example, if a hyponym for dog, well, for hyponym for animal would be dog, and a hyponym for dog would be chihuahua. So we can actually shift just even single words and make a big impact. But if it's too abstract, or sorry, too specific, we need to increase the abstraction, and this is where we use these lenses. So for example, when we did the Deepwater, the Exxon Valdez oil spill and the toothpaste example were great examples of the analogy lens, which is asking who else has solved a similar problem? Who else has prevented viscous shearing? Who else makes whites whiter? And you can see that there's 5 lenses here for that. The change perspectives are very powerful lenses because these are really shifting timing, shifting who does the work. One of my favorite lenses right now is the resequence lens, which is really about how do we change the timing of the work that we do so that we can get different solutions. So let me just show you how the examples that we just talked about, for example, the baggage claim was the flip lens. The flip lens basically says, instead of solving for this, how do we solve for that? Instead of speeding up the bags, how do we slow down the passengers? But it was also a great example of the substitute lens. We substituted words. Instead of reduce wait time, we went to improve wait time. And we also used the variations lens, which was, well, maybe instead of slowing down all the passengers, maybe we only slow down the passengers with checked bags. So this is just to give you a little example of how these are done. We can certainly dig deeper into this during the Q&A. Let us just right now, though, go to the place that you can download these resources. So if you go to invisiblesolutions.resources.com, invisiblesolutions.resources.com, you will be able to get access to the 25 lenses. You'll be able to get access to videos. I have instructional videos. I have an extended video of the baggage claim story if you want to just hear even more on that. There's a bunch of videos there and other tools. All of them are free. Just, all you have to do is give me an email address and you definitely won't get spammed. You'll just occasionally get hear from me with some other insights around solving problems. So with that, I say we go to some questions before we wrap it up with a couple of stories. So I'm going to pull up the questions now. Let's see. Okay. So how do we find the right questions, creativity techniques? So the right questions to me are you always using the lens. And what I love about the lenses is after I wrote the book, I stumbled across a quote from Mark Twain. And to paraphrase his quote, he said, basically, there's nothing new under the sun. It's impossible. What we need to do is look at things through a mental kaleidoscope. And we need to give them a twist and a turn. And every time we give it a turn, we're going to see something new and different. But they're always the same old colored pieces of glass that have been in existence since the beginning of time. And that, to me, is really the whole point of the creativity techniques. The creativity techniques are the 25 lenses. Next question was, where do these 4 questions regarding baggage claim fall in the Goldilocks principle spectrum? Great question. And here's the thing, sometimes you're gonna go more abstract, sometimes you're gonna go less abstract. So for example, the baggage claim, we started off with maybe a little too specific. How do we speed up the bags? As we made it less specific to how do we reduce wait time, well, now that at least gave us a view to something else, but then we made it more specific again, which was how do we slow down the passengers? So we can continually change questions and move around and twist and turn the questions to get different potential views on the solution. And one of the things you're going to find is sometimes as you increase abstraction, you see things that you haven't seen before. As you reduce abstraction, I'll just give you a quick example here. I saw we had somebody from Bogota, I believe, on the call. I'm going to just do a quick example here that actually the solution was found in Bogota, Colombia. So just give me a second here to pull this back up. All right. Okay, there we go. So this is actually, we had somebody from London too. So this is a question that came from London. This is a problem that was being done in London in the UK. And the solution came from Colombia. So I figure we'll make a connection to 2 people, or at least more than 2 people who are in this room. The question was, how can we improve the education system? How can we improve the education system? Now, I want you to think about that for a moment. The education system and the Goldilocks principle is too abstract because there are so many different factors that impact the education system. Teachers' pay, classroom size, infrastructure, technology. I mean, there's a long, long, long list of things that impact the education system. So the team that was working on this problem, the first lens that they used to find a solution was the result lens. Now, even though, and this is the interesting thing, is even though this problem was an abstract problem, they used the increased abstract lens first to give them a different insight. And so when they asked, what is the result? What's the outcome? Why do we have an education system? It's not to have an education system. The reason why we have an education system is to improve a child's learning. So that gave them a new perspective, something they hadn't looked at. What's the goal? What's the outcome? What's the reason why we have an education system? It's a child's learning. And then they used the leverage lens, which is a reduced abstraction lens. And when they used that lens, then all of a sudden they were able to find some new solutions. And what they did was they asked the question, what's the leverage point? The leverage lens is all around, what's the one factor that will have the greatest impact? If you could only solve one part of the problem, what would it be? And so the team talked to scientists and experts, and what they found is that when it comes to a child's learning, the single greatest impact of a child's learning is parental involvement, positive parental involvement, not helicopter parenting like is popular these days, but really getting involved in the child's education, working with them, teaching them, seeing how the child learns. That seems to be the greatest motivator. And so when the question was asked, how do we get positive parental involvement? A solution was found in Bogota, Colombia, where there's an experimental school with 100% positive parental involvement. And so that solution was analyzed and has been adapted to the environment for a larger school system. So it's great when you can start changing these types of questions. So thank you for that. Okay, we'll go to the next one. Great facts and thoughts. Question might be, how can I earn more money, which is not the right question. What would be better question? If there's no savings to be made, what would be a different question to ask? Great. So how can I earn more money? Well, obviously context matters in any type of situation we're working with. So when I'm working with my clients and solving their problems, I need to know a little more about the backstory, like why do you want more money? Is there a different way to achieve the same objective with less money? So let's just talk about money for a moment. You know, one of the lenses that we have, I'm just going to go back to this for a moment. I'm going to go back here for a moment. One of the lenses that I really like is the, where did you go? There we go. You're hiding. The concern reframe lens. Now, the concern reframe lens basically said, anytime we state something as fact, doesn't necessarily mean it is. There's a lot of assumptions. And the key thing with the lenses is we need to uncover the assumptions that we are making. So the concern reframe lens says that, you know, what do we need to do in order to move away from fact-based thinking to question-based thinking? So if somebody says, we don't have enough money, we don't have enough time, and you are trying to make progress with something at work, that's going to stop all conversations. Now, you could ask the question, how can we get more money? That might be the next question, or it could be, how can we do it for less money? Or how can we partner with somebody that will get the same result for no money? Most of my business is built around partnering with people where they take a slice of my business where I don't have to do the work, they do the work, and I get a check from them. And to me, that's a key interesting model. Is I'm not making more money, or I'm not focused on making more money. I'm actually focused on helping somebody else make more money. So we can look at the question from a lot of different ways. So it's hard to say what the right question is because there's never a right question. When you understand the context, though, you can use these techniques to find better solutions by changing the question. Excellent. Okay, we'll take 2 more here, or maybe 3 more. We'll see what we can do. Next one is, should you do this on your own, or should you always work with an expert? I would say both can work. I've trained my clients. I mean, my goal with my latest book and all these tools is to enable people to do it themselves. That is really what I want. Having said that, it is often hard to see what's right in front of you because we all have blind spots. We have blind spots based on our past experiences. And so our blind spots are going to prevent us from being able to see new opportunities. And so you can work with someone else. You can do it on your own. And always ask that analogy lens. Who else? Even if you're if you're stuck with, to me, that's always the first place to start, is if you're stuck for a solution, just ask, who else has solved a similar problem? Instead of asking, how do we make teeth whiter, ask, who else makes whites whiter? And I could give you a whole bunch of examples on that. All right, we'll do 2 more because I think that's really all we've got time for. So because I want to close with a couple of stories. But I will say that if you, I'm going to put in the chat right now, just so you have it. I'm going to put in the chat my contact details. I'll put the link to the Invisible Solutions tool, the download, so you can do that. Also, my LinkedIn profile is in there, and then there's also just my website. So if you have questions and I can't get to all of them, please just write me, connect with me on LinkedIn, write me there. Happy to answer any questions. All right, we'll do 2 more. Next one is, what is the best method to use when trying to solve a problem with a team? I think, well, first step is always make sure that you are focused on the question rather than trying to solve the problem. So when we, and this is why I think brainstorming often doesn't work, is brainstorming is built around the assumption that we can gather a lot of ideas, stick people in a room, virtual or other, and we're gonna get a lot of ideas, and out of 1,000 ideas, we might find a couple that are good. That's not really very efficient, and I find that in many cases, they're not even solving the right problem. So the first step is to make sure that when you're doing this, you are asking the right questions. So if you're going to do a team thing, focus on what's the right question. And now here's an important thing when it comes to teams. And I think I'll just, use this as my final answer for this question, is teams are great for being able to come together for a solution. But what happens is if we go to a team-based mentality too quickly, we lose the range of possible solutions. So the thing that I think is always really critically important is to make sure that before you have the team working on something, you have everybody individually. So if you already have a well-framed problem statement, don't go in front of a room and ask everybody, okay, what's the answers? What's the solutions? Have each person write it down individually. First of all, that will get the introverts or the people who don't want to talk or the people who are shy or whatever words you want to use, it will get their input. So if you had a team, let's say you're in a room, like I do a lot of big events. So let's say you're in a smaller event, maybe it's 50 people and you have 10 rooms of people in the smaller room. One of the things that you might do is at their tables, have each person write down their individual answers. Then as a table, have them get together and have them start to think about which are the best ideas and how they can all come together. And then as a group, as an overall group, how can we pull them all together? So I think that's really the key with teams, is to recognize that sometimes individual work is the first step rather than the teams. All right, last question for now. So to shorten the waiting period in supermarkets, can providing bags beforehand and reading the barcodes while the staff is placing bags be a solution? What a really cool question for a whole variety of reasons. First of all, I've spent a lot of time thinking about the problem of waiting in supermarkets. Back in 1995, 1996, when I was at Accenture, and I was leading this 20,000 person innovation practice, that was actually one of the examples we looked at, and we started playing around with technologies that have now come to fruition. So like here in the US, we have Amazon Go, which is basically there are no checkouts. You pull something off of a shelf, you put it into your cart, and you walk straight out. Those are the types of technologies we were playing around with. But what's interesting is you can do it a lot of different ways. And this comes back to the resequence lens. So the reason why I love this example is we assume that things happen in a particular order. Somebody takes something off of a shelf, puts it into a cart. Then the next thing they do is they take the cart to the checkout, and then the checkout, maybe it's a self-checkout, maybe it's somebody's actually doing it for you, but it still happens afterwards. What if you put barcode scanners on the cart? What if you gave people an app that they could just scan the barcode? If you gave people the bag, boom, you could do the same thing. You could have everybody checked out before they are done. So we've resequenced it because we're doing things in parallel and we're doing things in advance of where we normally do them. So it's just a great example, I think, of how we can ask different questions and rethink the question to come up with different answers. All right, so we're gonna move from there. Again, if you have any questions that I wasn't able to answer, please just connect with me and ask me the question. What I'd like to do is I would like to go to just one last example to pull it all together. And that will be this. So first, let me say that, the people who are on here from London, I miss London. I miss London. I lived in London for 5 years. It was just, to me, an amazing place to be. I lived in Notting Hill. This is going back in the days when the Notting Hill movie first came out, and that's why I decided to live there. And one of the really cool things, now, being an American, I wasn't at the time, because back in the late 90s, early 2000s, Formula One wasn't that popular here in the US. Well, one of my first clients when I got to the UK was a Formula One team. Now, if you're not familiar with Formula One, they're just really, really fast cars. And one of the things which I loved about working with Formula One is that it's not just the drivers and the speed of the cars, but it's the speed of the pit stops. It's the speed of the pit stops. And so I just want to show you what a pit stop looks like. If you've not seen one before, this is a pit stop. So car comes in, and you can see, boom, it's gone. Let me just in case you missed it, okay? We're gonna play that again because I think that was maybe just a little too fast for some people. I'll tell you what's happening here. Car comes in, watch this. It's up on the jack, tires are off, tires are on, car is gone, 1.92 seconds. To me, that is pretty unbelievable. And so I thought this was just like crazy. I mean, I go to get an oil change and it could take me an hour. Here, they're basically able to change the tires and fuel the car. Back when I was working, they were fueling the car. all in a matter of seconds. Crazy. So I talked with one of the guys that I worked with on the team, and I asked him, how do they do this? How do they get the pit crew to go so fast? And what I was told is that they tell them to go fast. Wow, that's not really that exciting. And what they would do is they'd have at the time is 19 guys around a car going as fast as they can, stopwatch, and they're going as fast as they can, and they would do it over and over and over and over again. And then there was a point that no matter what they did, no matter how hard they tried, no matter what they did to push themselves, they couldn't go 1/1000th of a second faster. That was their best, fastest possible time. And then they decided to try some other methods. So they said, we will pay you more money if you go faster. How do you think that worked? Not so good. They tried a number of different techniques, and then eventually they settled on a technique which was to tell people they weren't going to be evaluated on their speed, but rather their style. You need to go fast, but you want to think the word smooth. So as you're changing the tires, think smooth. As you're fueling the car, think smooth. As you're doing minor maintenance, think smooth. Go fast, but don't worry about the stopwatch. Focus on your movements. Of course, they were timed, and what they found is that the pit crews would go 0.2 to 0.3 of a second faster when they weren't focused on going fast. And when the pit crew members are asked if they were going faster or slower, everybody in the pit crew thought they were going slower. This is one of the other lenses in Invisible Solutions. This is the performance paradox lens. And the performance paradox lens basically says, paradoxically, sometimes when you're focused on the goal, when you're focused on the outcome, when you're focused on speed, when you're focused on going fast, you actually go slower. So if we're always focused on the goal, sometimes it doesn't produce the results that we want. And there is a corollary to this that I call the solution paradox. And to me, this is, pulls it all together, because paradoxically, the more you focus on finding solutions, the less likely you are to find a solution. If all you're doing is looking for answers, you will never think to ask better questions. If all you're trying to do is speed up bags, you're not going to think to slow down passengers. So what we need to do is pause and ask different questions. And to me, this is a huge opportunity. This is a great time for innovation. I really do believe, as challenging as the times are right now, this is going to be some of the best times for innovation we've ever seen. People are rethinking the way that businesses operate. They're rethinking the way that everything operates. Now, I do believe that initially there was a knee-jerk reaction, and everything was simply trying to do what we did in the past in a digital manner. It's why we're here on Zoom, and why Zoom's market cap is just quadrupled in the past 5 months. It's unbelievable. But I think we're going to start seeing bigger, better innovation that really takes full advantage of everything that's out there. And the key to that, though, is to recognize technology is never the solution. And it's not just about ideas. It really is stepping back and saying, what's the real problem? What's the real opportunity? What's the real thing that if we could solve this would have the greatest impact on our business, on our families, on society? And I strongly believe that when you use these 25 lenses and apply them to any kind of problem you're trying to solve, and take the time to stay in the question, you will find better questions that will lead to better solutions that will make this a better planet to be on. Thank you very much, and I look forward to connecting with you offline. Take care.